the dream of rapid error-free service delivery into reality. My name is Jim Murphy. I'm the leader for the Cloud Builder SIG at Vivit Worldwide. And with us today, we have Manoj Resingani. He's the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Hewlett-Packard globally for the cloud automation software. We move the slides forward. Okay. So again, this is Jim Murphy. I'm the Cloud Builder SIG. Here's Manoj, the Senior Director of Global Marketing, and he's going to be talking about data center automation and how to leverage the HP product suite to automate the building of servers and data centers. And next slide. This is a session that's being recorded. We'll be posting the recordings later on. They'll be available through Vivit Worldwide if you have interest in watching them again. And at the end of the session, we'll be hosting a Q&A session. If you have questions, please feel free to ask in the chat windows, and we'll be organizing them for discussion at the end of the presentation. Next slide. Yeah, off to your right there, if you have the webinar control panel, you'll see the questions box is located in the kind of the lower section there. You just type in your questions, and then we'll be responding to them as we can. All right, next slide. All right, and at this point, I'm going to be turning the presentation over to Manoj, and he's going to be taking us through the orchestrated data center and how to automate your life and make it easier. Manoj, I'll turn things over to you.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, guys. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Manoj, and let me walk you through what we call the orchestrated data center, actually showcasing for the first time, what HP really is launching in the market is the whole idea and the concept as to what really happens in the data center as the foundational elements to build all the new initiatives that you may have. Either it's about cloud, it's about mobility, it's about big data. We feel that the real constructs are within the data center that make this happen. So in our understanding from customers as well as from partners and a lot of the analysts, three main areas we've seen as the points where customers are really trying to accelerate the service delivery or improve customer satisfaction with these are the lines of business that they serve, or it's about IT reducing costs. And within the service delivery acceleration, one of the key things is, how do you really take applications and basically release them in a consistent and a compliant way? Also, how do you really go about creating new services and do that very quickly? The other couple of things is where IT's traditional role has always been is how do you really go about fixing issues that come up and do that in a right manner and in a quick manner. And then finally, creating services that are easy to use and at the same time the net burden on cost is being managed from year to year. So given these are the key business needs that are being impressed on IT, what's the state of IT today? We feel that from an innovation standpoint, there's hardly any time that goes into actually doing some real innovation work or any kind of projects and new initiatives because most of the time is being spent in just keeping the lights on. And one of the other things we see within IT is there are a lot of silos, and there are tons of manual handoffs that happen for even a single service, let alone complex services that could actually be far and wide across the organization. The other thing about processes is that they're complex. There are a lot of scripts working through these processes, but at the end of the day, because of the silos and the manual handoffs, the complexity only tends to grow. And the other thing that we have started to see, and we hear from a lot of the CIOs, is that they are investing in a lot of tools. Most of these tools may not even be utilized. Many of them are shelfware, as we've understood. But the bottom line is with all these tools and all the complex processes and all the handoffs and the silos, there's a resulting impact into the business. So one of the things is, you see a very slow response from IT, which effectively means if there are any new opportunities or any new areas that IT could be, investing and bringing back to the business so that the business could actually do different things, it's not happening at the same rate. There's a lot of loss of control issues that are occurring within IT, where businesses basically doing their own thing, creating their own shadow IT, or just going to third-party providers and buying services from them. And then finally, cost has always been the traditional pressure point for IT. So given these scenarios, right, we feel IT is being stretched too far. So in short, how does IT really enable the business to transform and basically adopt these new opportunities that may be available in the market, or things that they could be doing differently and creating new revenue opportunities for the business? How can they deliver with consistency and compliance while managing the heterogeneity that they already have and what has evolved over time? And finally, reclaiming some time and saving some hard dollars. So these are some of these traditional questions that we want to address as part of our discussion. Our point of view is that you can really unlock the potential for IT with the orchestrated data center. And what does really orchestrated data center mean? It actually is about orchestrating the operations and the timely delivery of the infrastructure and the application services to the business with consistency and compliance. So if you think about this, right, this is to be in the data center. It has to be in a private environment. It has to be in a hybrid environment. Across the board, it's all about consistency and compliance, that IT has to be able to deliver services to the lines of business. And one of the things that we believe is that if at all they are getting to the point of full-blown orchestration within the data center, they will be able to bridge these complex silos and improve the cost efficiencies while they're providing these new services in time, as well as creating new opportunities for the business. So what you're seeing in the center is an image that I want to sort of walk you through what really orchestration means in short. For a long time, IT's primary responsibility has been to just literally take the storage network, the hard components, the servers in the data center, and do some level of automation and orchestration, either using some scripts or some tools. But main focus has been in that particular core within the data center. But frankly, what you're really seeing is that the focus has to be within the applications. And how do you really take these applications to delivery? And to do that, really, IT's focus has to start sort of broadening and changing, or rather moving upward more in trying to bring in the database, the middleware, the web layers, so that they can actually take the application, right from the time when actually things are set up on the infrastructure side to the point where service is being delivered as one end-to-end orchestrated service. And what we feel is that the overall full stack automation is the first part of the orchestration that is required within IT, with the data center. The next thing is the same orchestration should also be able to encompass all the security, the compliance, the monitoring, and the discovery. So effectively, it's the overall operation cycle within the data center. And we feel that this is an important piece that has not been happening. There's a lot of focus on the core infrastructure components, and still, even though there's some automation and some scripts being applied, there is a lot of, I would say, fragmented orchestration that occurs. It does not tie the end-to-end stack, and at the same time, if it does not bring together the help desk, doesn't bring together the monitoring. So effectively, from an overall service delivery standpoint, the existence of silos and those complex processes still exist, even though IT has some level of automation. So in the way we within HP have sort of looked at the overall orchestration within the organization, as well as within how IT is working within the data center, we feel there are 3 key steps to simplify the administration and the workflows and basically do the delivery. And that is basically you first start with automating of tasks. These are some basic tasks that are happening on the server, on the network, on the storage devices, or it could be in the database layer. Each of these tasks need to go through some level of task automation. It could be a few servers, it could be a few 100,000 servers. It doesn't matter, right? Once you've done that, that's the base level automation. You would then go into basic process orchestration, where you're really tying these server network storage, as we talked about in the earlier slide, right to the point of service delivery, right? And then finally, you're actually going into a full-blown transformation of that overall delivery, where you're keeping in view and you're designing a service end-to-end. And in doing that, right, at the customer standpoint or a consumer standpoint, you're really taking from a few days, few weeks, few hours to literally minutes by the time they can actually get the service enabled for themselves. What you're seeing on the top of this staircase is basically HP's differentiated value, right? From a scale standpoint, our tools really will serve from a few hundred right up to hundreds of thousands of servers. We have real examples that we can actually showcase that does this, right? The second thing is from a process orchestration standpoint, people are already invested in scripts. They already have a lot of things that are going on today within the data center. What we're basically talking about is having process flows and steps out of the box. 5,000 plus available to customers as soon as they get started with the tool. And what this allows them to do is to really not design from scratch, but start utilizing, best practices and templates that are available that they could obviously modify based on their requirements. But the idea is that they start very quickly. And the final thing is about the transformation. The whole idea behind building self-service and making sure that whatever is being done behind the scenes is available to the consumer within the organization or even outside the organization within literally minutes. So once you go through the discussion around orchestrated data center and sort of establish that there is a need for it, right? So what are the main requirements that actually help you build that? We've identified three basic needs that IT, at least based on our understanding, is always grappling with. One is they're either trying to do some basic efficiencies with element automation within the data center, or as we talked about earlier, bring in the full efficiencies where they are trying to go from infrastructure to the application, again, at the stack level. And the third one where we see a lot of the effort that is being spent is to create either a dev test cloud or a private IaaS or PaaS or some kind of an application as a service or software as a service. So some kind of a cloud environments, right? We see IT, at least in these three base initiatives most of the time, they're either grappling with one of these three or all of these three, and they may be at different points in time, in different areas and parts of the journey as they go through from basic element automation to cloud. So from a requirement standpoint, we've established these 8 key requirements as we feel these are important. We talked about task automation earlier. The other one is IT compliance, which we feel that today IT has been very slow in adopting compliance from an end-to-end basis. There's a lot of equipment, there's a lot of services that IT provides that are constantly grappling with trying to keep the consistencies, the patches, the vulnerability, and the risk under check. And effectively, it's a very reaction process within IT. The other part is heterogeneity. Just the way IT has evolved, just the way the silos have evolved, heterogeneity is the name of the business. So whatever tools, whatever things that you do within the data center, it's very basic nature that heterogeneity has to be adopted and has to be managed as part of the overall game plan. You heard a lot about orchestration earlier, right? We feel this is a very important piece that brings all these things together. Scale and flex is another area that we feel that, depending upon the business, depending upon the vertical, depending upon the time of the year, it could be seasonal. IT needs the ability and the capability that the tools that they're using or whatever they're deploying within their environment, can scale from less to a lot more and then come back. So there's a lot of flexing that occurs. And they don't need to be changing tools to manage, their scale and their flex. They would like to use the same tools and the same environment within which they're providing the services. The other thing is, if you're actually doing projects that are very data center centric, and now you've got to go and do things within big data or cloud services, IT cannot afford to hire different talent or different skills or buy different tools just for the data center and then differently for the cloud. The point is you need that synergy. You want the same set of tools that work across your environments. The other thing is about service design. Here's an area we've found that there's a lot of discrepancies, and even within IT we feel that given the same nature of service, we find that companies have different kind of service design concepts that they follow. One of the things that we believe is that you need some level of standardization, and you need a lot of good efficient tools and templates that you can actually create services quickly and have the kind of power right at the time when you're actually defining and designing it. And finally, you got to be able to measure all the KPIs. You got to have the kind of business metrics that you can actually go and speak up into the organization, as well as have a good view as to what are the different components that are involved that make up the full service. So you need a very good tool or set of tools that can give you the 360 view, as well as give you an understanding of how to measure and report out your metrics. So really the key differentiators that HP brings in each of these three areas, all these 8 areas, is that we basically have our tools that can provision from bare metal to virtual, and will provide patching right across the full stack, from the server, the network, the storage, the operating system, the database, the middleware, right into the web layer and the middleware areas. From a compliance standpoint, all our tools basically are audit ready, and they provide continuous compliance and basic reporting right to the point of assessment, reporting, and remediation. And remediation basically means if you actually have the right policies within the environment, if there's a kind of a change that occurs that was not signed off or approved, the tool will take care of actually reverting it back to the compliant template or the compliant configuration, effectively making sure that you're continuously compliant as part of your service offering. Heterogeneity, this is all about the openness and about being multiple vendor. We believe in this very strongly. In fact, our new tools are also embracing open source, which is Chef and OpenStack. Our cloud environments that you must have heard about with Helion, basically built on OpenStack and offering OpenStack services. And we also go back right into the legacy of the AIX and the Solaris, because a lot of the environments we feel out there have these legacy environments. They basically utilize these tools, and if IT is automating and is orchestrating and actually providing end-to-end services, you can't leave those systems out of the equation. They all need to be factored in. From an orchestration standpoint, we spoke a little earlier where we said that we've got these proven 5,000 operations and 80+ integrations. These integrations are not just with within HP's tools or with HP tools. These integrations are with third-party tools. So you could be having a monitoring environment which is non-HP. You could be having a help desk environment which is non-HP. The idea behind orchestration is tying a lot of these different pieces together, which means by its very nature it has to take into account what you already have. So effectively we want to be able to let IT leverage their existing investments, and as they add, the orchestration tool can build and accommodate all these third-party environments as well as HP environments. From scale and flex, we saw a little earlier, we do believe that this is an important piece and should not have, IT do different things because they are now scaling or they're growing. So, right from the start, the tools that they're adopting should be able to manage to say scale and flex. And one of the things we do is, as part of the orchestration engine, we allow IT to manage close to 15,000 simultaneous operations. This is quite a lot. Most companies will never reach this state, but it sort of gives you a point of view that, in the nature of the tools itself, we want to make sure that IT is pretty robust in the way they're managing this end-to-end service. From a overall synergy standpoint, we have made a very concerted effort to make sure that a server automation tool or a network automation tool or an orchestration tool that is out there, whatever it's doing in the data center, it will be able to basically incorporate anything that may be in a cloud environment, which could be on-premise or it could be in a third-party cloud. So for example, an orchestration tool that is actually triggering an action on a server within the data center can also manage a resource in an Amazon or a Rackspace or an HP cloud service, in a third-party cloud service. A server automation tool that is deploying a VM in the data center on-premise can also deploy the VM using the same policies in the Amazon cloud. So, for example, those are areas where we know IT has been struggling because they've been doing this separately when they approach these different environments. And what we're saying is that with the tools, you should have that level of commonality. From a service design standpoint, we basically offer a lot of power in our cloud service automation tools, where we actually provide basic service design, what we call classic service and seal design capabilities, where you're literally recognizing each component and their attributes and pretty much connecting these components to topological design, where you're actually creating your design based on topological attributes. And these are, think of objects that you're literally wiring together in a very simple manner. These objects could be coming from anywhere. They could be coming from third parties, and you have them in your library, or you could be creating these objects and you could be putting them in your library. And I'll show you an example in a screenshot very soon. Bottom line here is that it really advances your service design capability and gives you a lot of power, in your hands and how you actually create services very quickly and put them out into production. And then finally, our integrations with the executive scorecard and our asset manager allows us to bring in a lot of these KPIs that are within the data center right to the surface, so we can actually showcase these KPIs and give a 360 view to IT, as well as the CIO levels, as well as project managers and program managers. Everybody sees the same sort of dashboard and can click and actually go through the cascade of what really happens behind those metrics. So given that these are the key differentiators and talks about a lot of the requirements, let's jump into, how do we really get started? Because after all the good conversation about orchestration and the automation and establishing all the requirements, one of the key things is, we want to be able to showcase some of these use cases that we feel are the more commonly used use cases within IT that actually lets you get to a point or for a fully orchestrated data center. So what you're seeing here is within the automate category, right? We talked about the 3 steps: automate, orchestrate, and transform. In the automate category, we're talking about some basic provisioning and patching of servers, networks, and databases, and doing some audit compliance across all these environments. In the orchestration, right, think of at least 2 use cases. You can add one more, and that is you have the incident management and self-healing, which is basically taking any kind of alerts or any kind of incidents that are coming in, right from the point when a ticket is open to the point the problem is actually resolved, utilizing your orchestration engine, and the ticket is closed. So basically, to some extent, no human intervention really needed for about 60 to 70% of alerts that are coming in. It's really a very powerful capability to be had within IT. And this is something that has been around for a while, but if you go back and ask the data center operators, a lot of the people, at least in talking to us in the enterprise, don't use this capability today. So this is actually a very strong point of automation that you can actually deploy. The other one is rapid service fulfillment. This is an area that, you get a request to get a DNS server set up, or get a SharePoint, or get a simple request for an Exchange account. There's so many emails flying around. There's so much of that handoff happening between companies that are worldwide, or they have operations in different data centers. What we feel is that through orchestration, you can actually completely automate this kind of basic service request processes and deliver things very quickly, literally within minutes. And there's another one that we have not added here, but many companies have been talking to us about, is disaster recovery. Is how do you take health check and failovers and disaster recovery and basically tie this, intrinsically with all the operations that you've got. So the system is always checking the health of the environment, and if there are any points of failover, it's actually happening automatically, or at least alerting the operators that that is something that is required immediately. And we've seen a lot of such examples in real life, so we feel that that kind of orchestration is absolutely needed. And then if you move to the third part, which is the whole transformation of service delivery, this is what we call the building and operating of private environments. It could be dev test, it could be production, doesn't matter, or it could be actually doing hybrid cloud management, where you're actually bringing in third-party services, you have your own services, and you have your traditional IT, and really you have a management layer that orchestrates and manages services that touch all the traditional IT, the private and the hybrid cloud environments. So that's a lot of power. And once you have the kind of orchestration, you can actually get to a level of full-blown hybrid cloud management. And finally, really where IT wants to get to is to be a full-blown service provider, where this is not just about, automating and orchestrating, but it's actually, defining and managing the SLAs across the end-to-end services for the lines of business or even for partners. In each of these areas, HP has been leading the front, right? So in the automation standpoint, right, we are the #1 leader. If you take a look at where the star is, we are a major player, and we have been doing exceptionally well from a share standpoint. If you take a look at the orchestration layer, we basically stand out. The only other competition that we've seen that actually has been is, utilization of custom scripts. And what this means is that a lot of companies are still using custom scripts within their data center. Now, we don't believe that every script is going to get automated into an orchestrated process. However, we believe that close to 80 to 90% of these scripts, should be moved to an orchestration engine where the same process level of consistency and the way you manage that process gets a lot better and more efficient. And then finally, from an overall transformation of service delivery, this is a Forrester report that came out in October of last year, and they basically ranked us really high. They had some very strict guidelines on which they were, establishing those criteria, and most companies that have been traditionally calling themselves cloud providers or cloud technology providers, right, have had a hard time trying to get into the leader position. And HPC just sort of made it, and if you take a look at the report, it's out in the public, it sort of gives you a sense of how detailed and how diligent they are in terms of doing the assessment. So we lead in each of these three areas in the automate, orchestrate, and transform steps as we've identified. This is a quote from one of our key customers in Europe, and they basically come back and tell us that the way we look at the orchestration tool from HP, because we can literally create any kind of a business or technology process, they look at us and they're saying this is like Swiss Army knife. You can pretty much do so many different things, in one single tool. So let me walk you through a couple of examples of how our customers actually do this whole orchestrated data center today. The first one is Orange. This is again a European provider for services, and what they really wanted to do was create a public cloud environment that would be utilized by their customers as well as their partners. And they already had existing, VMware environments already built in silos, and they actually took our solutions and the entire orchestration within the data centers, and tied these multiple data centers together as part of their overall service deployment. And the plan is right now to go to about 30 to 40,000 VMs. Very soon, they plan to be in hundreds of thousands of VMs in about 18 to 36 months. So this is an area that we are keeping ourselves really well focused, because we are beginning to see a lot of providers, even within enterprise, wanting to be like a specific private provider to either partners or to other businesses. And we're seeing more and more of these examples come to the front. On the other side, you've got the Air France KLM merger that came through. They were basically struggling to create services so that they could very rapidly create the mobile environments where customers were coming in utilizing the smartphones, and in the back end there was a lack of agility and speed to get to that level where things would be moving really fast, because as you know, in the smartphone world and in the mobile world, application releases are happening literally 10 times a day, sometimes maybe 20 times a week. It's very fast for IT and for IT to keep up. So one of the things that they did was they actually went down the road of orchestrating the entire data center. Here also they actually brought in a few data centers together, but the most important thing was doing some core automation on the task level, as well as massive levels of process automation, which is tying all these silos together. As you can see, their delivery was literally cut down from day to like minutes in most cases. Most of the installation processes were all automated. And in terms of standardization, they basically made sure that all these standards were sort of well documented and those policies were created, and the systems basically follow the policy-based management before they actually go and provision resources. So very well done example of what an orchestrated data center looks like. And here we have got NNIT, again, another European provider. These are guys who are actually in the pharma industry, in the life sciences industry, and they created a cloud service, again, going through the basics of orchestration and automation. And this is a very, very good transformation story, because the IT department, after they did all the efficiencies within the data center, created a cloud service which today is being utilized not just by the health and the pharma industry, but they have started providing services to other government organizations just because they have a very strong level of compliance that they have deployed as part of the cloud service. So what they've done is they've actually created that service within IT to serve their own internal lines of business and their partners, and then extended that service to third parties completely different from their industry to actually go and offer and utilize and consume services as part of the cloud, which they call the GXP. And as you can see, again, it's all about transformation, which is, from days to hours to minutes. So at this point, I just want to give you a recap of what we spoke about a little earlier, and then I'll go into a quick flash demo as well as some new screenshots as to what we're releasing. But what we're saying is that if you're looking at acceleration of service delivery, improvement of customer satisfaction, reduction of IT costs, right? The point within this whole presentation is that at the end of the day, IT is looking for a faster ROI. And with HP, one of the things that we want to sort of ensure and sort of give you the kind of peace of mind is that we will bring you a much faster ROI with these solutions. And what you're seeing here are some examples. The one I actually do like is on the right, where if you're spending about $5, or rather for every dollar that you're spending, you're getting about $5 worth of benefit. This is a research that was done by IDC, talking about 33, 34 customers. And what they spoke about and said to IDC was all the areas that they actually took the repetitive actions and they moved that over into an automated tool or an orchestrated tool, they were actually able to see real return on investment in the first 6 to 12 months. And that's really the numbers that came back. So from an overall automation perspective, this is a huge return, from an IT standpoint. So at this point, I'm going to just switch gears and just walk you through a very simple screenshot-based demo of how a request that IT normally gets is about creating a service and then deploying the service and offering it as to the end customers or to the lines of business. And what really happens behind the scenes. So think about the first time the IT operator walks in and says, okay, I need to create a service. This is a sort of a service that is going to basically be a platform, which will include, making sure that I can deploy a VM and I can create an application service. So that means I need database and middleware all attached. What you're seeing here is the Cloud Service Automation tool. And this is the classic serial designer, right, where really you're bringing in a simple platform. You're identifying the service. You're bringing in the server group for the database and the application service. So you sort of started I would say, laying out the service elements that you need. You will define the components. You'll define what the subcomponents do. It's all it's all part of that overall service. And a lot of these components are also available in the library, so you don't have to literally recreate every single piece of this. Behind the scenes, because now that you've created a service element, you'll go into the orchestration tool, and you'll actually create sort of two lanes. One is establishing the VM. The other one is creating a database environment. So you basically setting up the database server. Attaching the middleware components into the database server. What you're seeing here is basically a simple workflow for these two lanes. And this workflow, if you double-click on these objects, you'll find nested workflows underneath it. But at the high end, in a very simple way, this is what the IT team actually visualizes. Very clean, very neat, very simple to use. And you can have, a lot of complexity and a lot of logic underneath it, and you can build all of that as these subflows and attach them and think of a nested program or a nested flow process. This is what it is. Visually very easy to understand and also very easy to use. And here what you've got, so we're talking about things behind the scenes. We talk about building the service, we talked about orchestration, and now we're talking about how do you really go about setting up that VM or setting up that application service, right? Here is a server automation screen. What you're seeing here is actually the operator is taking a golden standard VM, which is already attached to certain policies. Now remember, every environment that IT sets up, it is expected that there are certain standards and certain norms that they follow within the organization. Our recommendation is that those should be entered into the policy within the tool, and then everything that is provisioned should actually utilize those policies. So effectively do policy-based management and policy-based provisioning of the resources. What this allows IT to do is to keep things within standards, to keep things within compliance. And as you change the policy, as you change the description of the policy, as you change the metrics of the policy automatically attaches in that VM that has been created or the new VMs that are going to get created. So effectively, you're already keeping your VMs always attached to the gold template. So this is what really the screen is showing, is that they're actually going into a gold image, creating that into a VM template, and then they can utilize this VM template as the VM for the service that was created. So every time somebody clicks, they'll basically get that particular VM. And because policies are associated with that VM, as those policies changes or something is changed behind the scenes, you can ensure that the VM is always going to be compliant. This actually works for the VMware environments and also for the Microsoft Hyper-V environments. So once you've done all of that behind the scenes, here is the actual view the customer gets. They get this beautiful looking cloud service automation consumer portal. And as you can see, things are organized really well. They actually can get all the packages listed out. And really, it's about clicking a few buttons, in the front end. And behind the scenes, the orchestration kicks in, goes and does the delivery of that overall service. And the orchestration is actually guided by the service map. So that's really the way IT needs to get to a level of operations and, I would say, speed by which they can stand up a service, pretty quickly. On this tool itself, right, one of the key things is that we recognize that, this is a consumer portal, there's a catalog system behind it, and there's a service design piece behind it, and then behind those scenes over there, you've got the orchestration and the provisioning tools. We want to make sure that also in the same tool, you're able to see all the business KPIs. You don't need to, get into a separate tool to do that. So one of the things we've done is we've integrated with our executive scorecard and our asset manager tools, and we bring in a dashboard within the cloud service automation tool. So as an operator, an IT admin, you're able to design the service and do the orchestration behind the scenes, but also be able to generate reports and see the health of that service and the hygiene of that service on a day-to-day basis, and actually then report out utilizing that environment. So at this point, I'm going to switch gears again and go and basically just walk you through some screenshots of some of the products that we've just released literally in the last couple of weeks. And these products are pretty going to be in the market by the time we finish our third quarter, which is going to be in the month of July. So you're actually getting a sneak peek into some new stuff. Here is our server automation screen that you saw a little earlier. I wanted to sort of give you a sense of, what we're doing new is we have actually embraced, Chef in a big way. So effectively, if you are actually, deploying a VM and your application development team is already utilizing Chef, you can actually import those Chef recipes that they're using and attach policies that you already have based on the standards that you've created, and effectively, service that line of business app dev team using the same tools that you were using to normally manage the lifecycle of the servers in your data center. So now this is an important feature that we want to give IT and more power to IT so that they can work much closely with their lines of business. What you're seeing here is again a server automation screen that is showcasing how we manage virtual machines in an OpenStack environment. So this is an area that HP is actually investing very heavily in the cloud space, where we see that OpenStack is becoming de facto in many places. Many customers are asking for it. They want to reduce their costs. They want to create more efficiencies. They want to go into standardized environments. So with the adoption of OpenStack increasing, we want to make sure that the tools that sit behind the scenes that are managing the VMs, that are managing the policies, that are making sure that those VMs are always compliant, they should be working with the OpenStack cloud environments, seamlessly. So right up front, we have this tool which will allow you to manage resources, manage, your VMs based on the policies that you set up in the OpenStack cloud. Here is a thing that we were speaking about, specifically with KPIs and how do you really manage and see the hygiene. This is a very specific example where we call Automation Insight, which is the capability where you can assess and see if your systems are completely patched and whether you've got the compliance, pretty much on a continuous basis being managed as well as being ensured. So this sort of gives you a view of what's going on with respect to the compliance, the non-compliance, the failed scans, and where do you really need to go and scan. And then it also gives you the report based off of the, which environments are completely compliant, which ones need some more work. It's something that, IT constantly is working on, but in a very reactionary way. We want to bring this right to the top and the surface as the business goes on, where they don't have to go and struggle to assess and report and then remediate. This at least gives you the understanding of the assessments that are going on and what you can report out and where you need to go fix. This is the operations orchestration tool. We talked about a little bit, and I showed you one example. This is another example. Very easy flow representation. You can see the visual indicator or something that is being executed. So if there's a particular step being executed, and even though there's a lot of automation here, the important thing I want to stress is once you have a flow that is within the orchestration tool, it doesn't mean that the train has taken off once it starts. The admin always has the power to step the process, to go in steps and basically pause and see the reaction and pause and go to the next one. The important thing is that that power will always be with the operator, but in many cases, if they feel that there are certain processes that should pretty much run without any intervention at all, they can basically run these in the background or in the foreground, and the orchestration tool takes care of that. So IT still is able to interact a lot better with the tool, but at the same point in time, all the knowledge and all the scripts and everything sits in this one single environment that is very easy to use, and also you can create new flows very quickly because we talked about those 5,000 operations plus that are there. Really allows IT to within a couple of hours start creating really complex flows in the environment. One of the things I wanted to also bring to your attention is we started offering a free community edition a month and a half ago. It's available on our website. When you get these slides, if you click on the link, it'll actually allow you to basically download from HP's web, and you can use this community edition. It's got all the power. The only limit is that we basically allow 100 flows per month, which does not restrict the kind of flows you create, but only restricts the number of times you run it. And the idea is that if you have got a smaller environment and you don't need to run a flow more than say 30 times or 50 times, right up to 100, this tool with all its power, right, is available to you. So at least you can try it and test it, and if you want to scale, you can, or you can pretty much sit with what you have on the web. Here is some of the enhancements we have made to our cloud service automation tool. We talked about Chef. We talked about OpenStack and the tools within cloud service automation. Also, we have actually embraced Chef and OpenStack. We make those 300+ application patterns, available from the Chef cookbooks, and we have also, adopted the big data environments like Hadoop, MongoDB, CouchDB, HBase. We sort of want to bring a lot of these environments and make it available to IT so they can utilize these as part of components, as well as create service designs that may utilize these components because the app dev teams may do this anyway. So we want to basically give that power back to IT as they create these services. This is another screen for cloud service automation. We spoke about topology-based designs. This is one sort of way to envision how the topology components are going to be available. Very simple, easy to understand. These components could again come from what you may have created within IT, or it could come from third parties. They could publish a component, and you could actually just use a component because the component has a layer of abstraction wrapped around it, because all it does is talks about the key attributes, and you can literally just take that component and plug it into your service design. So effectively create your services very rapidly, without you having to have all the knowledge of every component. versus a classical design where, or serial design, you keep a lot of knowledge. And both these designs or designing tools are, they have a place and people are using it. But we are beginning to see a lot more companies asking us for the topology-based designer because they don't want to mess around with standard components if they can get those, either from their own internal work or from external providers. And finally, this is something new that we have brought in as of this quarter. This is what we call as the enterprise maps. Think of the whole discussion around plan, build, and run. So you've got the IT's focus has always been on build and run. This is an area where architects are involved and they're actually planning an overall end-to-end service and all the components of the service, which components need to be re-architected if this has to be converted to a service. So this is a tool that allows them to take a look at the overall map of all the different service components, and effectively they can identify the modules, analyze them, and see which ones they need to deconstruct and sort of throw away, which ones will remain legacy, and which ones need to be re-architected because they have the right pieces that can be utilized as part of a private cloud or hybrid environment service. So a lot more power into the architect's hand. And the important thing about this tool is that whatever business definition that they have that they've converted to an IT service map, they can basically execute that entire service. IT can execute the entire service, and then they can tie back and see if all those components were correctly executed on, because this map constantly keeps running and gets that feedback once the service is deployed. This is something very new, and we believe that the persona for this particular tool is going to be mainly the enterprise architects or the IT architects who have been sort of utilizing a lot of Excel and those kind of tools to create what we call service maps within IT. And this is all conforming to the architect standards, which are the Archimate and the TOGAF standards that exist in the architecture world, IT architecture world. So with this, at this point, I just want to leave behind a few things for you. I really encourage you to take a look at the blog, the Grounded in the Cloud. We just released our new product announcements and the enterprise maps. Please feel free to read about it. I've got that star on the top right. If you click on it when you get the slides, it will take you straight to my blog. It sort of walks you through each of these areas that I covered today. It sort of gives you a good handle on what we are doing. We also have the community edition link. Please, try it out, see everything that I've told you. If that can work for you, that would be great. The other thing is we also have a trial for 30 days where you can actually try out the server automation tool. And this, you can literally, within a couple of hours, you can start managing up to 3,000 servers. It really makes the whole lifecycle management from basic provisioning, patching, compliance, and deployment of bits on the VM really, really straightforward. Try it out. Give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. So with this, at this point, I will turn it back to questions.
Thank you, Manoj. We've got a couple of questions here, and if the folks in the audience have some questions, we have a few minutes here at the end where you can post questions and we can ask Manoj to answer them. Can you tell us a little bit about the integrations between these cloud solutions and, say, our help desk and/or our ticketing systems or inventory systems?
Absolutely. So one of the things is that the orchestration tool that we have, we believe that the IT departments are already using some or the other kind of ticketing system. So today, HP Operations Orchestrations integrates with service management. This is the HP tool. It also integrates with Remedy, which is not an HP tool, because we find these two very commonly used. There are other tools like ServiceNow, which we integrate with, another very commonly used tool. We recognize that these tools may already be existing in the IT environments. And when the orchestration engine actually works with this tool and also works with the monitoring that is already deployed within the, again, it could be an HP monitoring tool, it could be, Nagios, it could be some of the other third-party tools. It doesn't matter. The bottom line here is that we recognize that a process flow will entail all these different environments to manage incidents, to manage alerts, or to service a request that is coming in through the help desk. And we believe the orchestration tool has to work with all of these.
Okay, that's good to know. Another question that was posted out there is, do these tools integrate, for IT departments that are looking to leverage hybrid cloud solutions? Are they able to use this solution to manage both their internal private clouds and third-party clouds like Amazon or Google?
Yes. So what we believe is very strongly, again, is that you shouldn't be moving between tools because you're using an Amazon environment and you're already having tools within your traditional environments, which is your data center. Our clear position is that the tools that we talked about earlier, right? All of these, by their very nature, first of all, they're heterogeneous. Whether it's VMware, whether it's Amazon, it doesn't matter where the environment is being set up. These tools will allow IT to manage very efficiently resources regardless of where they are or where they are instantiated.
All right, and then are some of the features like, all right, hold on, I've got another question that just came in. What is the intersection between Operations Orchestrator Health Check concept and the monitoring tool? For example, for use in DR. So, and perhaps what that question is asking, maybe there's some automated DR. If a monitoring tool detects a problem, there's the concept of automated disaster recovery if need be. Have you seen that?
So, sorry, go ahead. Finish the question if there's anything else.
I'm sorry. I just was curious if you had seen anything along, could give us a little background on automated DR.
Absolutely. So this is a use case that we feel has got tremendous amount of punch because almost every data center has some or the other kind of a DR process already in place. What we are learning from a lot of companies is that either they're completely outsourcing it to a third party because they don't want to deal with this issue as much, or they're doing it internally, but they're doing it in a very fragmented manner, and there's a tremendous amount of reaction that is there in that process flow. One of the things that I described it earlier is that within the orchestration tool, we have some best practices and some flows that we can actually provide as just out of the box. Now, we recognize right away that that particular flow necessarily won't map to your DR process and your requirements and your health check requirements. But the idea is you've got a starting point. And if anybody's interested, I can actually send them an example flow, at least an image where you can actually see how that particular flow was built and the way it actually does basic health check. And we call it self-healing because when issues occur, it will actually go and do some kind of a failover based on that health check. And it is constantly running in the background. So you're not really struggling with a failure and then issuing a command and doing a failover, in a backup manner. But you're actually doing this concurrently as business goes on every day. It's a very powerful capability that the orchestration engine is, very. I would say it's the right tool for the right kind of use case.
Excellent. And I know we're coming down to the end here, but there's another question that's come up that I'm curious about is what scripting languages are supported for advanced customization of these tools? For example, Python or that kind of a language.
So that's a good question because one of the things that we've done with the orchestration tool specifically is that we don't require you to do any scripting. We can import some scripting languages like Python. The other one was Jython. I don't think I've heard Jython, but I can ask more from the product teams and get back to you on this one. But one of the things that we do with the orchestration tool is actually to import scripts that are already in place for the most part on the admin side. And many companies, when they start with an orchestration tool, that's exactly what they do. They don't necessarily always recreate flows. They take the opportunity to do that because they can make it simpler. They can rewrite some stuff and make it easier. But everybody doesn't have the time to do that rewrite. So in most cases, it's all about importing scripts into the tool and actually creating flows out of those scripts.
Excellent. And anybody on the call here, feel free. You've got your email address right there, Manoj at hp.com. Feel free to send Manoj an email directly and ask any follow-on questions. My clock shows we are at the bottom of the hour. I think there is a brief survey that is coming up at the end of this. If you could take the survey and provide some feedback to HP, and then again, feel free to reach out directly to Manoj and get some of these additional questions answered. So with that being said, it's time to wrap up the webinar. I appreciate everybody joining and really appreciate your time, Manoj. Thank you very much for providing all this insight into HP solutions for cloud automation.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.